Hello, welcome to week 5 of the Professional Writing for Educators course. I'm going to just do a real brief overview of what the assignments are for this week and then talk a little bit about week 7 as we approach that problem and practice paper and how to kind of get that organized and kind of get that started. So here we go. Okay, first up this week is going to be the graphic organizer. So the graphic organizer and the purpose of the graphic organizer is for you to just kind of take a step back and think about where you are professionally in your communication. So how are you communicating with those the people that you communicate with every day? That's going to be different depending on who you're communicating with. And we all know that. We all know that. But the purpose of the assignment is not to just give you something to do this week, but it's to really kind of take the time to think about, how do I communicate with people? And if I were asked to give a presentation, how would I do that? Not just the words I'm going to say, but how do I design that presentation? What do I need to put into that presentation? How do I hold my audience's attention? How do I make it relevant so they'll want to listen to me? We've all sat through some professional development that we're thinking, man, this is bad. This is really bad. And we want to think about, okay, why was it bad? And if I were asked to give something similar, how would I do something better? So that's what the graphic organizer basically is doing, is kind of giving you some time to think about, how would I do that? And how would I address people? So there's 3 different parts to that you'll need to fill in with 3 different kind of scenarios there. And you will, on that third one, you'll kind of be thinking about, how is it, if I were asked to give a presentation, who would I give a presentation to? How would that sound? The second thing that you're going to be asked to do this week is to create an email to the person who is in charge of your program. This is basically asking for approval to do your research topic, which we'll talk about in just a sec. So if you are solely online and you have not attended Angelo State University as an undergrad, there's a pretty good chance that you do not know the people who are in charge of your programs. So we want to think about, how would that email sound if I'm trying to, one, convince them to approve me for this research project I want to do, which you're not going to do. Please see the announcement and the directions. You're not going to actually send the email to them. But what would that email sound like? And how would I word that? And how would I address that to someone who has more education than I do? So in the academic world, the more degrees we get, the more level kind of respect and etiquette that we kind of follow on that. So that's the purpose of that email. So if you're going to address a PhD, right, and ask for approval of something, there needs to be a level of, again, kind of a level of etiquette and the way you address them. So that's kind of the 2 things that are up for this week. I also want you to think about, as you generate that email, take a look at your annotated bibliography and pick a topic. What is it that you kind of honed in on? So as you looked at your interview that you had, you all visited with someone in your field. What did you see, or what did you hear, or what kind of made you think? Maybe they didn't say it, but something that as you left that conversation, you kind of started thinking like, man, there's like this big problem. And maybe they didn't explicitly say that, but you kind of start to feel that there's this issue that's in the field that you really want to explore further. So kind of think about that topic, and as you make your annotated bibliography and as you start to work on some of those things, like, what is that topic? That's going to move you towards your week 7 paper, that problem in practice. And so I want to talk real briefly about that. Maybe not as briefly, but I want to talk about that so that you have an idea of, how am I going to organize that, and where is all that going to come from, and how do I even begin to collect information and research, and what is this I'm supposed to do? So we're basically asking you to think about your interview, maybe and what field you're in, and if you are like in the classroom right now, what do you see as a problem that's going on in the field you want to go into? So one of the big things is with counselors and guidance and counselors is just huge caseloads of kids. You know, we all know what ASCA says about the ratio, and it seems to be a really big problem. And so if that's what you think is the problem, then we want to take the time to research that further. So it's not a problem solution paper, it's a problem paper, and you're showing us what the problem is and how that problem came about, and what's the status of that problem now. Has it gotten any better? Is there anything in place? Does the research say anything about that there's anything in place to make the problem better? So as we look at just a variety of topics, and everyone's going to be different on this, and everyone's going to approach that a little bit differently, you're looking at, again, establishing that there is a problem. Here's what the research says. I have 3 pretty good points on what the research says, and I'm basically explaining what that problem is. We want to make sure that we're really clear that this is what the problem is and this is what the current research says it is. Not so much what my opinion of the problem is and how I think it needs to be fixed. Again, it's not how the problem is going to be fixed. It's that there is a problem, and here's where the problem lies and how the research supports that. So we want to keep in mind as we start to write the paper that I always want to refer back what does the research say? What is the research telling me that I found? What are they telling me about the problem of case overload? What are they telling me about teacher burnout? What are they telling me about teachers who are reluctant to implement technology into their classroom? What are they telling me about mental health of students? What are they telling me about, what's the research telling me about bullying? What is it, once you've picked that topic and that problem, what does the research say? Not so much what do you think it says, right? So that's going to start your thinking, and that's going to generate your search as you start to find things. But you really want to think about what is the problem and what's the status of the problem. And within that, as you start to research, there should be some themes that start to emerge, and you should start to see kind of the same things coming out as you start to look through all of your information and all of the sources that you have found. So a couple of ways that we could structure that. I'm going to go to my notes now. A couple of ways that you can do that is, so you can establish what the problem is. You can talk about what the problem is, and maybe where the problem came from. So if it's something that dates back to, say, the 1980s or the 1990s or even the 1970s or the early 2000s. So what is that problem? And has it changed any to now? Has it gotten better? Has it gotten worse? Are we still faced with those same issues? This is where current research is going to become really important, because you can't establish a problem from the 90s and then continue to use sources from the 90s to say that this is the current problem as well. So we really want to think about what is the current problem and not current problem, but what's current on the research end of it. You could even go on to say, if the problem hasn't been solved, like why hasn't it been solved? Like what's been going on? Is it just something that they haven't put a lot of thought into? If you run into that, where there's not a lot of information on it, if you run into something like, I can't find much on that, then it may be that it hasn't been researched. There's nothing out there on it, or there's just a couple of sources and they don't really say anything about that. So you might want to adjust your thinking a little bit as to what exactly is the problem. Maybe you need to broaden your search. Maybe you're getting way too much and then you need to narrow your search. So that's going to change depending on what your problem is and how you want to research that. You can even move on to like how's that going to impact education now, right? What's going on? How did that problem start? What's gone on with it? And how does that impact us now? Kind of like a historical view of it. That's one way to kind of organize your paper. Another one is you could just do your problem and then 3 factors that are contributing to that problem. So again, for everyone that's going to do this, it's going to be a little bit different. It's maybe not the same, and you may approach it differently, but you're really just kind of looking at the problem and what does the research say about that problem. Again, we want to keep personal opinion out of that, like school districts should really take care of this problem, or teachers need to make sure they do these things, or administrators truly need to understand the role of the counselor. And if that's what the research says, that is great. But we want to make sure that we keep our personal opinions out of that as we kind of move through that. Let's see, anything else that we want to talk about? Just a couple of brief announcements. If you're not checking the feedback that you get from your instructor on your assignments, please do so. We're providing you very valuable information. There are a couple of things, like on maybe your cover page or your title page, maybe your running head isn't correct and you're not seeing that, and you continue to submit that paper week after week with an incorrect running head. Maybe you have some citation issues and you haven't fixed those, and week after week you're still you're still losing points. So if you don't understand how to check the feedback, because it can be a little tricky, so turn it in some of those places, those platforms. If you don't know how to check that, please let us know so that we can guide you through that so you can find that. If by chance you've submitted an assignment and you get your feedback returned to you and you're like, hey, how did I miss this? But I've already submitted, so I can't fix it. Take heart. If the deadline has not passed and the submission deadline hasn't passed, if you'll email your instructor, then they can open that back up so that you can fix it and resubmit, as long as it is prior to that deadline, that 11:59 p.m. deadline, whatever day or assignment it might be. So we wish you the best of luck. If you have any questions, please check out Class Cafe. There's always some great chatter going on. We have people who are really involved. You can ask anything or email us. We will answer anything that you need answered. And if we can't, we will help you find the answer. Have a great week 5. Everyone, we are halfway done. That's kind of exciting. Halfway done with the writing course. Have a great week.